My name is Sterling Gates. I'm a filmmaker out of Oklahoma, currently living in Los Angeles, California. I made a short film called Just the Janitor that plays on Saturday at 2 p.m. It's a story of a henchman, a guy who used to be a henchman for the mob, and then he got out of the life. Now he works as a school janitor at an elementary school. And then one day, one of his hench buddies shows up and says, "Hey, the bank across the street from your school, we're gonna rob it, and we want to use your school as our escape route." And the janitor says, "Heck no, why would I do that?" And they said, he goes, "I'll give you $100,000. He says, "Great, see you Friday." And then chaos ensues. I have been a screenwriter for a long time. I worked on some CW TV shows, Supergirl, The Flash. They were always about heroes fighting villains, and I wanted to tell a story about a villain's redemption and what it's like to be a villain who decides to leave the life and then get pulled back in, not necessarily by choice. And then how do you get back out? Once they pull you back in, you know, like Godfather Part 3, once they pulled me out, I go, once you get pulled back in, how do you get out again? Time is always the biggest challenge. Any production, almost every production here will probably say time was the hardest factor. We had an elementary school for 2 days. We had 50 kid extras. You know, we had a giant fight scene. We had 5 hours to shoot it. We had 6 stunt people all working in concert. I mean, time was always the hardest factor, just because you always want more time. But also, for every minute you're spending money. So you're trying to get in and out as fast as possible to save as much as possible. You know, one of the great things about working on a show like The Flash is they ask all writers to be on-set producers. So you're shoulder to shoulder with the director of that episode, working with them to make sure that it's the best episode possible. So I get to basically shadow some of the best television directors around and watch how they operate and watch how they manage a giant crew. And I was a writer on a giant crossover we did called Crisis on Infinite Earths. All the CW superhero shows, the DC TV CW shows crossed over into one giant 5-episode thing. And I worked with a director on that named David McWhirter, and watching McWhirter deal with, we had a scene with 19 cast members in one giant scene, and watching him work, it was very inspiring and made me like really reconsider, do I want to only be a writer, or do I want to write and direct, or do I want to direct? And so during the pandemic, that fun time, I had a lot of free time, and I was like, I want to write and direct something and get it off the ground. And so I wrote the script, and then I'd worked with some producers in Oklahoma when I was living there, and I called them and said, I'd like to make this short film. And they said, send it over, and they called me 20 minutes later and said, we're in. And so we were off to the races. I got a book coming out from DC Comics early next year. I have 2 books actually coming out from DC Comics next year. I have a Supergirl book called Bizarro Girl. I was part of this giant Superman story called Superman New Krypton Saga, and they're re-releasing all those in giant omnibus volumes. So those will be on shelves at comic stores in February and March. Yeah, www.sterlinggates.com. I'm on social medias. I'm on Blue Sky. I think I still have a Twitter account, though I don't probably use it ever. Clearly I don't use it ever if I don't remember if I turn it off or not. But no, sterlinggates.com and Blue Sky are sort of my 2 main socials right now.